slow zones, according to a rescue vehicle moving through to the next point at which it could remove a stricken car. But certainly just another learning process in a driver, Chris Lowe's case, who came from sim racing in 2024, dabbled in radical racing in the UK, but moved up to the GT3 class of racing this year. It's what we call SP9 here in the NLS. That's its nomenclature, but has not just moved to the front, he's done it in immense style, and certainly a huge support from Max Verstappen, who, even if he's on a Grand Prix weekend, tends to be very busy watching every single time the cars are out on the track with Chris Lullum and his regular teammate Thierry Vermeulen. He's on their back, on their case, watching, and now this weekend taking part. So the boss is in the house.
Just getting word from race control that the code 60 at Kesselchen will remain in place until the end of the race. So either that's barrier damage, it's most likely to be that actually, and rather than affect or compromise the run through Kesselchen anymore by having circuit vehicles on a narrow piece of racetrack there, better to just say, well, we'll keep this code 60 in place. We will protect the barriers if necessary, but leave it as that, because it's probably a fair length of Armco that needs replacing. You never have a small off at Klostertal Kesselchen due to the approach speed. Maybe even both sides of the road have been dinged with the barrier so close to the edge of the circuit. And also a potential noise violation now for the SP8T car that has fallen to second place, but it was the long-time race leader, number 191. That is just a first noise violation, so I believe it's just a warning. But obviously, if the car's caught doing that in the remaining 15 minutes again, then there might be penalties heading the way of the Pro Sport Racing Aston Martin. SP8T is actually now led by 187, which is a BMW from the FK Performance crew, and Mijatovic doing the driving there. So that is Ranko Mijatovic, joined by Nick Wustenhagen, as those are so often driving partners. And 187 has needed to cut down a substantial lead at about half distance to now be in front in SP8T. But it's still a relatively small margin. I'll make it about 8 seconds that separate that top two.
Right, we've got a bit of a battle on, because the battle for third place, we've had Vincent Colk falling away in the second of the Mustangs. It was one that ran second for a very long time, started by Frank Stippler, but he's now, well, at the start of the lap, he was 5 and a bit seconds clear of the 80 alternative fuel class Max Cruz Racing Audi, but Benjamin Leuchter is catching him big time, just going over the first second of the Sabine Schmitz curves, and clear line of sight. I reckon we're only about 2.5 seconds maximum between these cars. The Ford in third place and the chasing Audi in fourth, but catching. Max Cruz Racing is their first time running with a GT3 class car, but it's running not in the main class, but in the alternative technology class, and doing things differently in terms of its fueling, but definitely through the sweepers of Hatzenbag closing in. Hey, we thought this race was over. Nah, not yet. Maybe for the lead of the race, because of the 28-29 second margin, it's looking pretty comfortable indeed for Chris Lullum and Verstappen.com Racing. But Ford looking set for a 2-3 result, maybe 2-4. Well, we'll find out.
Krognes leading Pro-Am in SP9. The Cup 2 fight has calmed down a little bit. It was, well, I remember only about 45 minutes ago, the top two were separated by about half a car length, when it was the 921 and 948 car opened up somewhat now in the favour of David Yarn and the Mullner Motorsport car. And you've got Tobias Muller second, and in third place in Cup 2, which is a Pro-Am car, the Grosser SRS Team Zorg Rennsport Porsche. Klaus Aberlan still circulating in 10th place and doing battle with Christoph Breuer. They've got potentially a full lap between them, though. It's a significant margin after a great early run from Renazzo Motorsports Lamborghini Huracan, which rather set the foundation for a not necessarily an easy second half of the race, but a more comfortable one than the start was. Aberlan has not really put a foot wrong, but might be suffering for the lack of teammate. You've got to think fatigue now is starting to creep in after such a long drive. Even for the full-out pros at Le Mans, there is a rule that says you can't drive for any more than 4 hours in one slug, and certainly Klaus will be feeling it now. I'm not sure whether he's ever done that before as a solo racer.
He was entered last time out just as a solo racer, but I'm trying to remember. I'm not sure he actually got to the finish, but certainly it's a challenge. Mind you, cast your mind back to when certain drivers tried to do the entirety of Le Mans on their own. It didn't quite work.
23 hours, though, I think had been done. Yeah, Abelan, even quite recently, has been racing with people like Felipe Fernandez-Larza, who could be busy elsewhere. Vasquez Garcia for K. Kramer Racing is 4th in Cup 2. Still keeping our eyes on the gap, though, from 3rd to 4th. Different categories of cars involved, but if a pass is made by Ben Leuchter, that will change the overall podium order. And here's a chance for Leuchter to really close up the ground. Maybe he could have pushed yet further, because that was only double waved yellows, I think, unless I was missing a speed board as well. No, here's his chance. So he's going to be right on the boot lid now of Vincent Kolb, who couldn't really do a great deal about that. And the Audi thought, well, if you're not going to go as fast as I want to, I'll just close up the distance. And now at this restart, coming out of the Klostertal and Kesselchen area, it's still a car being recovered, and there's a lot of fluid on the road as well. So that's another reason why this needs to stay in place till the end of the race.
Yeah, exactly so. The barriers on driver's left very much bowed from where a car has gone thumping in, largely in a bleak blow, but still enough to rock the barriers back. And then you go around the next corner, then there's a gap in the barriers, and that's where they're trying to put the stricken car. But yes, not much time. 10 minutes left in this race. They're not going to clear all that up, and they don't want anyone to go racing. The barriers are protected by a course vehicle, but certainly if you hit those a second time when they're not in true, then bad things could occur.
Other class leaders late on in the piece include the 962 car, which may be a lights to flag victory for Josh Bednarski and Lorenz Stegman. They certainly got a great getaway in the yellow and white WNS Motorsport Cayman 718 that started from pole position. An early fight offered by the Falcon liveried Audi, which seemed to sort of some sort of a mismatch, and so it has proved with the more consistent run from Porsche number 962. The 800 TCR Honda Civic FL5 with Tiago Monteiro still driving that, on course for a victory in TCR. And then elsewhere, 83 has at the sharp end the Audi RS3 of Max Cruiser Racing. So they've got a couple of well-placed cars in AT1 and in AT3, both alternatively fueled divisions. SP7 being led in the final 10 minutes by the number 70 car. And car 70 is the entry from, this is the SP7, by the way, for the older school Porsche Cup cars. And actually, that's not a GT3 Cup car, that's a 718 Cayman for Anton Ruff, who has been joined earlier on by David Barst and Axel Sartingen. But the engine you hear in the background is the turbocharged Ferrari mid-engine for the 296 GT car. Chris Lullum, the young man from Kent, took this car over at the 2-hour marker from his well-known teammate Max Verstappen. And Lullum has been so composed to this point. It was a very impressive first stint, which was a total of stint 3 in the collective run through the race. And now into stint 4. He's suffering a bit here and there, but that's because of the code 60 at Kesselchen, because his near rivals aren't able to really close the gap.
So this should be the final lap. Just under 8 minutes remaining. No one's lapping under 8 minutes, so do the maths on that one. Just something was in the back of my mind. Klaus Abelan, the last round, the previous round, he'd announced that would be his final race, but he didn't finish the race. I guess that's why he's back. And you know what? Having enjoyed it, and he's racing solo, which is nothing to be sniffed at. 10th overall, second in the SP9 AM class. Come on, surely you got one more race in. You do the final round in a couple of weeks' time, but you know, what an effort. I mean, for anybody, even if you were a super fit 21-year-old, doing 4 hours around the Nurburgring Nordschleife in a GT3 car would be tough. But 65-year-old Klaus Appelen, well, what a star he is. And of course, he had the ultimate fame in moving from Porsche to Ferrari in 2023, and his car with his drivers going through to win the 24 hours here at the Nürburgring. The week before Ferrari returned to Le Mans for the first time in 60 years. They had that rich run from the 50s into the early 60s of success before the Ford sledgehammer came through and thumped them into the weeds. But they were back and they took victory there as well. But, you know, Klaus and his crew, Fricadelli Racing, they got there first, putting Ferrari back on the 24-hour map. Don't forget it.
And the final race of the season is actually a first ever, a final race of champions to be held on the 11th of October. So the first version of the NLS Sport Warte Rennen, and that'll be a 4-hour race as well. We've had the 6-hour race earlier in the season. We've had a couple of double headers as well. No, actually, just, yes, the double-header which served as rounds of the NLS, which were the 2 qualifying races towards the end of May, and then the most recent double-header, which was a Saturday evening race, followed the next day by a Sunday afternoon race, the ADAC ACS Cup and the Reinholders Langstrecken Rennen. But a first-ever NLS Sport Warte Rennen on the 11th of October, which again will be a midday start local time and will be covered here on the Radio Show Limited network of channels to make it 10 races for the year. How about this then in the closing stages? It's the final lap, yes. Chris Lulham at the moment has pretty much a 30-second lead over Jan Mardenborough, who has nobody really to race with.
It's come down, actually, down to 22.5 seconds, but that's fine. He can defend that, but the gap between 3rd and 4th is down to, well, blink of an eye, 1.5 seconds maximum. Vincent Colvin, the second of those Hout Racing Mustangs, hanging on. But Benny Leuchter putting a fantastic job in the Max Cruz Racing alternative technology Audi, not running in the same class, but he's all over the tail, down through Hats and back they go.
Even if Leuchter gets through, it obviously won't affect where that car finishes in SP9 Pro, but it will deny Vincent Kolb and his teammate Frank Stippler an overall podium. So it is well worth fighting for, and it depends how much risk Ben Leuchter is willing to give this, but he's been chasing that car for all of this stint and probably much of his previous efforts as well. Marcel and Dominic Fugel have been backing him up brilliantly in their Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo 2, and it'd be quite some statement for an alternatively fueled car to get onto an overall podium, albeit up against a relatively small SP9 field, certainly the Pro field, with not a huge amount of cars entered. And don't forget the demise of the dynamic GT Porsche, really at the start of the race, when that car couldn't even take the rolling lap because of a very late drama. Clearly the team had not got any inkling about in the prep for the race. So SP9 Pros, 1st, 2nd and 3rd at the moment. Cup 2 Porsches are 6th and 7th and 9th positions. And a great run for the 3rd of those cars, considering that is a Pro-Am lineup for number 901. 901, the driver combination of Patrick Grutter and Fabio Grosser. Again, which side of these BMW, or one BMW, one Porsche, should the Vincent Kolb car go? He was partway up the curb there, which will have unsettled the second of the Mustangs. 3rd and 4th totally together as they head down towards the second entry route. And once more, Kolb down the inside, needed to be very, very careful. We're not a million miles away from where Kevin Estre had his incident during the 24 hours and put an Aston Martin on its roof.
Nose to tail, and I absolutely mean nose to tail. Now suddenly at car length between them, but the traffic, the last 3 or 4 corners, not going well for Vincent Kolb. Now they're clear. The Audi is a car length behind. blink of an eye ago, the corner, slow zone coming up, double wave yellows, the Ford slows, the Audi slows. So is this going to buy him time towards the end of the lap? This is the final lap. This is lap number 25. Sorry, I beg your pardon. It is lap number 28 they're on at the moment, but the gap between first and second, they know where the damage is on the circuit. They passed it before. That's at Flansgarten. And again, it's like driving through treacle and various points on the circuit where lots of quick drives being put down, stricken cars being pulled behind the barriers. But does that help the chase or does it hinder it? On the restart, the green flag is waved. The Mustang already starts pulling away from the Audi. This is the battle for third place. Will Kolb carry on certain points on the circuit? Benny Leuchter in the chasing Max Cruz Racing Audi has looked fantastic. But I must say, Johnny, the traffic really didn't help the Mustang. Driver there.
No, and Benny Leuchter will be licking his lips to ensure that his car is right with the Mustang as they head through Galgenkopf for the final time. We're a number of corners away from that, but the black and red Audi driver just needs to focus on closing the gap or at least keeping it consistently tight. Into the carousel they go, and the Mustang will pop out of that tricky left-hander with good speed heading up the hill through the right-hand kink first of all, followed by two more significant left-handers, and then you've got to balance the car on the brake and throttle at hoher act, and the road surface beneath both cars is not in great condition, so there's a little bit of movement again as he turned in. But Leuchter's not going to try anything heroic, I'm sure, in the next sequence of corners. Just have to bide his time through Brunchen, Flansgarten and the Stefan Beloff S. But if he's this close as they go through Galgenkopf in a few corners' time, his opportunity to the run to the flag is going to be huge. The Ford Mustang is not the smallest of cars. It'll be punching a huge hole in the air, and the Audi will benefit massively from that tow.
Porsche Cayman just in the pass of the Ford, but further up to celebrate, but that is a margin of about 23, 22 seconds. The job is almost done. The sunshine is out, slow traffic, a car being towed along the Dottinger Höhe, but clean line of sight now for the blue and red Verstappen.com Racing Ferrari, run by Emil Frey Racing, started by Max Verstappen. He punched it into the lead of the race, no problem at all from third on the grid, in front by the first corner. Chris Lullum completes, and the sun clearly is shining on the pair of them.
What a story this is then in global motorsport. The first time that Max Verstappen attacks an NLS race, a Nurburgring Langstrecken Series race from the Formula One star and his young teammate of the UK. They're going to win the race after 4 hours. The 57th edition of the ADAC Barbarossa Prize goes to Max Verstappen and to Chris Lullum. The Ferrari 296 of Emil Frey Racing, Verstappen.com, Red Bull as well, taking the win. And this could be the first of much success outside of a Formula One paddock for the well-known Dutch racer. And likewise, you know, does this provide an elevation of ability or an elevation of exposure for drivers that he can race with as well, such as Chris Lullum? Second place does go to Jan Mardenborough in the number 9 Mustang, but is there going to be a late change for third position heading towards Antonius Bucher? Benny Leuchter wanted to be late on the brakes, but the real compromising factor was that flatbed and the recovery vehicle that is being towed down or lifted down the Dottinger Höhe. Had that not have been there, I am 100% confident Leuchter was going to go for the outbraking manoeuvre into Tiergarten. The flashing of the lights from Vincent Kolb and also for Frank Schnippler does confirm that the Mustang number 6 finishes on the podium, but it is so tight at the line. What's the gap? 1.5 seconds?
1.5 seconds. I tell you what, if that course vehicle hadn't been there, the tow could have been achieved. The tow was achieved, but the Audi with Benny Leuchter could not jump out because there was the width to do it, so he had to carry on and try and attack into Tiergarten. But for Vincent Colby, he drove well to defend there. But again, these extraneous elements within a race, and as we say, it's, you know, the weather's started to change even now. We've still got a lot of cars with probably 5 minutes of racing to get to the end of this final lap, but when the flag fell after 4 hours of racing, Verstappen.com Racing, victory for them. They led every single lap of the race, and that's quite an accolade in its own. And just remember, Max Verstappen, the first half of the race, built up a lead of 1 minute and 10 seconds. It did come down. They lost a bit of time relative to the chasing Mustangs when yellow flag periods of the patches of the circuit cleared up before the Fords came through, but still the margin 25 seconds at the end. Great run from Jan Martin, but really waved the flag for him, the Hout Racing Mustang driver. His first attempt to race in an NLS race for 10 years. 2015 was the last one he did. He's raced here since in other events, but he'll have enjoyed that one. But really, you can imagine just how much fun Max Verstappen had there. How many of his rivals in Formula 1 will be allowed to come and play in these things? You can certainly see, you can guarantee quite a few of them will be watching going, oh, why is he having the fun? I'm just sitting on a beach now, or down the gym, or having a plate of salad, or whatever, you know. But this is what it's about. It's a driver who's just got absolute love of racing in his veins. You think back to other drivers. Kimi Raikkonen walked about from Formula 1. He'd had enough of it, went and rallied. Fernando Alonso went away, won Le Mans, and so on and so forth. And of course, now we've got people on the other end. Last week, a few weekends ago, the Goodwood Revival, Jenson Button finally scored a historic race when he's already buying cars to compete in. Jacques Villeneuve goes, hey, why are you guys having fun? Come out and play in more things. I think it only adds feathers to your cap.
Robert Kubica, a Le Mans winner this year as well, another one to add to the list. He's had lots of experience in other forms of motor racing as well, and some stories to tell, mind you, too. But the checkered flag falls on Klaus Aberland. Is that his final race here at the Nurburgring? He did get to the end of this one. We're willing him certainly to come back for the first ever Grand Final of Champions, which will take place in the second weekend of October, NLS 10. So there is still one more to happen. It remains to be seen whether Klaus Aberland changes his mind, but what a way to bow out if that is to be his final race with a solo drive. And where in class did he finish in SP9? Am flirting with a podium
Twice. Second. What am I talking about?
That's all right. Second place behind the Christoph Breuer 780. Lamborghini of Rinazzo Motorsport. Chris Lullum opens the door, very casually gets out and says, what's all the fuss about? I've just won my first Nürburgring Langstrecken Series race. With Max Verstappen, who must be nearby, a tap of the roof of the Ferrari 296. But I've got to say, so composed for 22 years old. Yes, he knows the car. He's been doing a lot of GT racing this year, coming out of a UK-based Radical Championship in 2024. But the big step from virtual racing to doing it for real, and as I mentioned at the top of the show, that transition pretty much seamless.
Yeah, he's been super impressive this year. Of course, in sim racing, you don't really get a live interview straight after a race, but he's got Patrick Simon down there, racer, commentator extraordinaire, and great man in the pit lane. But yeah, there's a big smile on Chris's face there as he sort of straightens his hair and yeah, relaxes. Long race.
That stint was long, definitely, and I mean he will be used to being in the rig for that amount of time. As to whether he's ever done 2 back-to-back stints for the duration of just less than 2 hours is another question. But consistency is so key, not getting flustered too much by the traffic around him. And, you know, if you do have a lap that is, for instance, 30 seconds slower than you're used to going, you can't let that niggle away at the brain and let it affect your final few laps, because there's nothing he could have done about that. That was purely because of caution areas that slowed him and didn't slow the chasing Mustangs. But by the end of it, 25 seconds an advantage. It was way more after, what, an hour and 40 when Max was at the wheel of that car. I'm just wondering whether Max has actually made a run for it to jump away from the big crowds that will be heading away from the Nurburgring in the latter stages of this race day. And that might not be a bad decision. It's a classic mic drop moment, isn't it, to do a couple of hours in the car, but have that over a minute lead and then not even wait to see where your teammate finishes. Oh, well, I'm out of here.
Yeah, look, the facts, Max was here, I think was brilliant for him, brilliant for Chris Lulham. And also, you know, Chris would have done some double stints in something like the Spa 24 Hours, for example, but not on the Nürburgring Nordschleife. That's a factor we have to keep throwing in. And also today was a day of extraordinary number of yellow zones and slow zones around the circuit. So he's had to learn how to deal with that. And, you know, when you're running in GT racing, something like the Spa 24 Hours, which would be the biggest event he's done this far, that's all one class of car. You come here, the Nürburgring Langstrecken Series, and you have just enormous performance differential between effectively the road class cars. Up front, though, probably one of the stars of the race, second place for him at the end, Jan Mardenborough. He chased and chased, got to, what, 24.5 seconds down at the end. But certainly that Hout Racing Team Mustang, they were the ones that pitted earlier than their rivals, but in their first of the 3 pit stops. But once the second half of the race came in, that car was just going great guns. But today, without a shadow of a doubt, belongs to Max Verstappen for coming along with his team. A Formula 1 driver, no, not a Formula 1 driver, really at the moment, the Formula 1 driver. World Championship galore in his bag. He wants to do more. That's a message I would love to get across to his Formula 1 driving rivals. And you know what, a lot of them would desperately love to do it too. Contracts are contracts though, but well done to Helmut Marko and Red Bull Racing for letting Max out to play, and he played with great style, didn't he?
So well done to Jan Mardenborough, you've mentioned, Fabio Scherer and Dennis Fetzer, who finish in second position in their number 9 Hout Racing Team Ford Mustang. Vincent Kolb, who was under huge pressure in the closing stages from Benny Leuchter, but Kolb sharing a third step on the podium with Frank Stippler, who was entered into a couple of cars this weekend as well. I assume he did drive the Jutta Racing Audi at one point, but remember that was actually in the garage for a little while being repaired after it suffered some damage to the front. Alexei Veremenko and Selv with some tales to tell from their afternoon.
I don't think he did get into that, but I'll tell you what, it fell down. We had 108 starters, I beg your pardon, and that was stone last, apart from those that crashed on the opening lap and didn't continue. Got up to 56th place overall, so, you know, only gained 50-plus places, but, you know, press on, and they'll use the experience gained today to go to the final round on the 11th of October.
And the gap at the line between the second of the Mustangs and the 4th place finishing Audi was actually half a second in the end to car number 22, which had qualified in 6th. So that is a net gain of 2 positions for Dominic and Marcel Vogel, along with Benny Leuchter.
Max has found his way.
Still here.
Yeah, he wasn't familiar to the longer pit lane here. He's all smiles, nascent moustache there on board for racing here, but I think you'll have enjoyed that hugely. And yeah, there's an enormous smile on Max's face. That was something different, something he wanted to tick off, but you could be sure he's back. He's got permission to do the full 24 hours next year here at the Nürburgring, which is fantastic news.
Still wired, I think, from those opening 2 hours, and I'm sure delighted for Chris Lulham as well. They will have had a conversation off camera. And Max Verstappen just laying the paving slabs for this approach potentially to a 24-hour race in 2026. That's not confirmed yet, but he has stated this week that he would love to do the 24-hour race around here. Imagine watching a Max Verstappen overnight stint for 2, 3, 4 hours perhaps. And then, you know, once you've done one 24-hour race
to it, and I think it's phenomenal to have him here this weekend. But I haven't seen him smile this much for a long time. There's a different sort of pressure here. It's only the internal pressure. The pressure from outside isn't there that it always is in a Formula One event. So I think this is not only good for fans of GT racing, but it's actually really, really good for Max. I think he will have gained so much from this. We certainly have.
Well, there's a big cheer as the interview ends and he is guided upstairs towards the very large media centre here, where I'm sure he will do a full press conference as well. So we'll be able to confirm the positions again. The 31 Emil Frey Ferrari 296 of Chris Lullum and Max Verstappen, 2 Ford Mustangs of the Haupt Racing team, the 9 and the 6, with Benny Leuchter just falling short of the overall podium. And well done to the crew from 34 Aston Martin, who took pole position: Christian Krognes, Matteo Villa-Gomez and Anders Buchart, who win SP9 Pro-Am. The next and final race of the season will be NLS 10, the 11th of October, the first ever NLS Sport Vata Rennen, the final race of champions. And you'll be able to follow all of that race live right here on the Radio Show Limited network of channels as well. Congratulations again to Max and to Chris. Thank you, Bruce Jones. We're on elsewhere on the network, bringing you live coverage of the FIA World Endurance Championship from Fuji in a few hours' time. So join us for that on RS1. Otherwise, though, NLS back in about a few weeks, 3 weeks' time. We'll see you for that. Bye-bye for now.
Dann auf der Gesamt 9. Position der dritte Rang in Sachen Cup 3 Porsche Carrera Cup Klasse mit Grütter und Gerosse. Und SP9 Pro, auch hier die erste Position, der Klassensieg auf der Gesamt 10. Position für Gülden, Sandler und Henneritzi im 347er Porsche. Wir schauen eine Seite weiter, suchen uns den nächsten Klassensieger, finden den auf der 18. Position. In Sachen Porsche Cayman